So Mike, I want to welcome you to the show today. It's unprecedented times, and it's always a pleasure talking to you. So what are we gonna cover today? What's the big thing on your mind?
From going from a fully on-site office to nobody being in the office, and the difficulties and experiences included in that.
What's your business look like? How many employees? What is it? What's a typical work day look like? And you mentioned that you do have the ability to work at home a couple days a week. Is telework different than permanent work remotely?
Yes and no. If you have the right tools in place, remote work can be almost the same as being in the office. The biggest issue for myself and my staff would be the inability to put hands on machines. So if your computer breaks, then we're going to have an issue and we're going to have to figure something out. But beyond that, remote control software and things like that allow my team to do their job. We've provided enough of the tools to our employees to let them do their job as well.
What kind of tools are those, Mike? Like do you think has been the big kind of multiplier for tool sets that you're glad you have in place now?
Sure. We're highly invested in using Microsoft Teams. That has been one of our biggest productivity boosts when we've kind of been forced out of our comfort zone. We used it in the office as well. It's used for day-to-day communications, whether we're sitting 5 feet from each other or 500 feet from each other or 5,000 feet from each other, right? But it takes a different culture, mindset when you are not able to still walk down the hall, right? Yeah. It's easy to say, hey, I'm having this problem, but hey, can I just pop into your office and let's go from there? It's a little bit different, right? And I think the biggest thing is
I think we're social, Mike. I think we're social creatures.
We are. We absolutely are. And that's why I don't like these folks that get on these meetings and don't turn their camera on.
Yeah, I don't like it either. I'm not good with that.
Yeah, I don't have the best camera on right now, but it's better than nothing. Nobody needs to see this.
I was in a deep meditative moment early this morning, and I was like, the last time we've actually the large chunk of the population has worked from home, probably 100 to 150 years ago. We were all worked on farms, and like when you were shoeing the horses or making the bridles, it was probably attached to the side of your house.
Right.
And so you rolled over, and your kids are probably, while you're in the fields tilling the farm, the kids are probably doing their thing, but they're sort of adjacent, but they're not like in your face, because you're like in this spread out area and where you're actually doing manual physical work. But it's really interesting. As I was pondering this, I'm like, well, now we're staring at computer screens largely, and the 5-year-old or the 10-year-old or the teenager are yelling and screaming, or they're trying to do their work digitally. It's like, it's kind of, I think it's whacking human beings out.
Yeah, it's crazy. It really is. This afternoon, we're having a virtual happy hour with my team, where we're all going to get on Microsoft Teams with a beverage and, just kind of catch up with each other, because we haven't seen each other in a week and a half or 2 weeks. So, I mean, you have to create these opportunities to do so, right?
I like that. Actually, and for all of the listeners here, Mike is, I would say, there's, from the scale of continuum of CIOs, from introvert CIOs to extrovert. I put you on the extrovert side of the continuum. So I'm not surprised you came up with the virtual happy hour option.
What can I say? I like to talk to people. We're also holding virtual office hours every Wednesday for an hour and a half. My team and I are getting on a Teams meeting that's open to the entire company. For them to come in and say, hey, I'm having trouble with XYZ, or what are your recommendations for using this tool, or can we use this tool, now that we're working from home? Do you approve it, right? And, we had our first one last week, and it was very lightly attended because I didn't really get the word out very fast about it. So this afternoon here, we're hoping that more people come on board and ask questions. I've already had a few people say they're going to swing by. And I'm hoping it'll be not just people coming to ask questions of us for support, but getting together to kind of have that conversation of how they're getting their jobs done, right? I want more people in there talking to each other than necessarily talking to my staff and me.
Are you using Teams for that? How are you doing that on Zoom?
We're using Teams for that.
Okay.
We do use Zoom as well for some of our bigger meetings, our company-wide meetings, and we do a lot of webinars. A lot of our scientists do a lot of webinars. And so we do use Zoom for a little bit for some of those bigger projects. I know Microsoft Teams can handle it. We're just not quite as familiar with it as we are with Teams, or excuse me, with Zoom for those types of things.
So there's a great tool that I'm going to roll out for the CIOs here soon to experiment with. It's called Virbella. Have you ever heard of Virbella?
I have not.
Virbella, and it's a virtual world. Not a virtual like Zoom call, but I'm talking like you like teleport into this world, and then you pick an avatar, and then you go to a conference room, like literally a conference.
Nice.
Or you can go to an auditorium or whatever.
Right.
And then you can put up like, okay, this is XYZ room, and you can go in and shut the door and have a private conversation, put up a PowerPoint, talk. And so we're going to...
It's like Second Life all over again, right?
100%.
Yeah.
Second Life. And it's, I think exploring different possibilities for work, I think is...
it's the new normal.
Yep. Never waste a good crisis, right?
Yep. It's crazy. I'm not sure if work's going to ever go back to the way it was after this. And that's something that everybody's going to have to kind of think about moving forward, right? For many, many, many years, we have said, this type of job cannot be done remotely, or this type of job cannot be done remotely. And I mean, yes, of course, there are some that cannot be done remotely. But in a lot of these industries these days, especially in mine, in the pharmaceuticals, a lot of these jobs that we didn't think could be done remotely are now having to be done remotely and are getting done. So moving forward, we're going to have to rethink, remote work possibilities and policies. We're going to have to.
100%. I was just having that conversation a moment ago with another guy, Mark, and I think you're 100% right, and I think this is a great opportunity for CIOs to really not waste a crisis. That's the wrong word, but people now understand that we maybe don't have 5 years to figure us out, or a decade. Like, let's figure it out in the next month.
Sure. Exactly.
I think Tony Robbins says people vastly overestimate what they can get accomplished in a year.
Right.
But they overestimate what they can get done in a year, but they underestimate what they get done in 5 years.
Right.
And so I think now it flips it upside down as far as
That's right.
I think we need to figure this out like now.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. And I know that in the past, CIOs and CEOs and managers have always worried about, are my employees just going to be sitting at home watching Netflix when they're supposed to be working? And you have to have a little bit of faith in your people, right? You've hired adults for the most part. Treat them like adults. Don't treat them like kindergartners. You have to understand that some people, given the opportunity to work at home, they may get their best work done from 9 p.m. to 1 a.m., right? If they don't have to be sitting in meetings with other people, I don't care if they're on from 8 to 1, 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. I don't care, right? As long as the work's getting done and you have faith that they're getting it done and they're producing results, you have to trust in your people and give them that autonomy to do what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think also it's going to flush out. I think businesses will end up 20% lighter. Now, why is that? Because I think not because of cash flow and things like that. That might happen anyway, 20%. But I'm talking 20%.
Unfortunately,
I'm 20% below that even, because I think that sometimes managers are lazy. They're like, I didn't set like actual job outcomes for this role clearly enough, and and the person kind of filled the seat, but they sort of like weren't quite accomplishing what they did because the leader, the manager, was not clear about the outcome, and then the leader's leader was like, okay, that person fills a spot. But when you put that person home, and
Right.
now they don't have that direct they don't have that direct interface, then they sit there and go, I really don't know what a successful day looks like. Like,
Right.
what does a successful day look like in this role?
Right.
So that it can be done autonomously or with the lightest touch. So I think it's going to force clarity within not just within the CIO and their teams, but across the business.
Yeah, that's that whole concept that I call leading up and down the chain of command, right? Because your employees have to be comfortable, questioning things up the chain of command, right? You have to be able to say to your manager, I'm sorry, I don't understand exactly what you were trying to accomplish with this. What is the intent of this project or of this assignment that you're giving me, right? And the leaders also have to be able to push that down. This is why we're doing it this way. These are our, the point of this. And being able to have that back and forth, up and down that chain, allows that clarification of communication to be done, right? Because again, in a situation like this, communication is going to be the key, right? Because if you're not telling people what's going on in the business, or if you're not telling people what's going on even in your department, people are going to make things up. And 90% of the time, they're going to make up something that's 10 times worse than what's actually going on, right? You leave people to their own devices, they're going to come up with the worst possible situation. It's just human nature, unfortunately.
So Mike, as we wrap up here, what are some of the things that you think are the biggest wins that you've learned so far, and that this opportunity has exposed? You think, this is this is something that not only is a win, it's something we need to keep doing.
So it's hard to say, go back in time and prepare your staff for working remotely, because that's what we had done, right? We had already been a remote friendly organization, 1 to 2 days a week. We encourage it, and allowing people to do it. Take advantage of this as an opportunity to, okay, I know that you have to take your son or daughter to a doctor's appointment, or your dog to the vet, or whatever. Go ahead and work from home. Take that 10 to 11:30 appointment, and then maybe when you need to wrap something up at night. But here we've given you the tools, we've given you laptops, we've given you all these tools to get into what you need to work on. Take advantage of it. Encourage your people to do it. Trust them to do their job. They're grown-ups. Sure, you're always going to have a few that are going to take advantage of the situation, but they're probably taking advantage of the situation when they're sitting in the office also. But moving forward, it's changing the way we're working. It's going to be something that more people are going to push for. And now that we see we can do it, it probably is going to become part of people's salary negotiations and yearly reviews. It's like, okay, well, I'd like to work from home 3 days a week now, and for some, it might make sense, right? So, again, make sure your people have the right tools, have the open communication, encourage people to ask questions of you and of even your supervisor, right? Go all the way up the chain of command if you're having questions about what's going on, and be clear, be honest, be transparent. This is not a time to be hiding anything from your people, because people are nervous enough as it is with what's going on, that they don't need to be nervous about what's going on with the business as well. Honesty and transparency is how I operate as well. So.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, I really appreciate you for jumping on.
Absolutely.
And sharing what's working, some of the success you've had, and some of the hope and inspiration that I want to get out there during this time frame, as people are kind of working in a very different situation and environment.
Yeah, it's we're going to get through it one way or the other. It's just, how are we going to look at the other end of this tunnel? So
that is true. Well, thank you. I appreciate you coming on, Mike.
Absolutely. Thanks, Bill.